Someone brought this here for me.
Okay. You're ready. Yes.
Okay. Good morning. Begin by thanking our sponsors, Talmud Torah sponsors of the month, Shmuley and Liba Dinowitz, for Zuchus and Elias Neshama, for her parents Avram Ben, her Binyamin, Moshe, Neshama Shavin Aliyah, and the family Shavin Achama. And we thank the sponsors of this week's learning, the Week of Learning by Ira and Miriam Grossman, in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Ira's beloved mother, Freda Grossman, Freda Bas Shmuel, and Neshama Shavin Aliyah, and the family Shavin Achama. Today's daf is daf Yud Tes 19. We'll quickly just recap what we learned yesterday. We did it quickly at the end. We had this opinion of Rav Meir. If you go back to daf Yud Ches Amud Beis, it is 6 lines from the bottom. We had the Gemara quote a Mishnah Tanu Rabbanan Eine emanim lepaisloi divra Rav Meir. Rav Meir said, Eidim who come in and they would like to testify and say that a shtar is not kosher, they are not neman. So we're trying to figure out what is it, why is it that Rav Meir has that opinion. And we had this idea that perhaps Rav Meir hold in the second line on Daf Yud Tes, my taima Amar of Chista, Kasavra of Meir Eidim she'amru lahem chismu sheker al ta'aregu ya'aregu v'al yichasmu sheker. So there was this idea that perhaps there would be some type of yareg val yavor. In other words, it's so chamor. It's so terrible for a person to sign falsely on a shtar, which would obligate somebody to pay money, that the person would be obligated to give up their life for that. But ultimately, the Gemara dismisses that and says that's just not one of the big three. Now, I don't want to get into the sugya yesterday, and perhaps we shouldn't spend so much time on it today either. But the Gemara is not really saying that there is a fourth one of the 3 cardinal sins. There's just, the way the Rishonim explained this is that perhaps there was a minhag. In other words, people took this so seriously. It was considered in society to be such a horrible thing to sign a shtar falsely, to put your name on a document that you know is a document which is giving false information, which is going to obligate somebody to pay money, that people took it so seriously that they themselves would choose to give up their life rather than be so far out of the norms of society to sign such a shtar. But ultimately, the Gemara says it just can't be that would be the reason for Rav Meir, that a person would be considered to be so far out of society and therefore he's not neman to say that. Because the fact of the matter is, had he come before Beis Din and asked the question, should I sign the shtar or should I not sign the shtar, we would have told him he should sign the shtar because that's the halacha. Even though that perhaps the minhag was different, nevertheless, that's what we would tell him. So as the Gemara continues, Amalei Rava, Hashtilu Asl Kaman Lemluche, Amrinu Lehu Zilu Chasaimu, V'al Tikatlun. We would tell him, sign it and don't be killed. So the Amar in the Chadavar Shaimed B'fnei Pekuach Nefesh Elvedes Kechavim V'gilei Arayes Shvichas Damim Bilvad. That is the halacha. The halacha is, unless it is either Gilei Arayes, Shvichas Damim, or Avodah Zara, whether it's idol worship, or it is illicit immoral behavior, or Shvichas Damim or murder, those are the only times we would tell somebody that they should give up their life. And the halacha would not be that if a person is in a situation where he would have to give up his life instead of signing a false document, we, the Beis Din, would tell him, sign the false document and keep yourself alive. So therefore, it can't possibly be that that's the reason why he's not neman to say that he signed it. So Ella, the Gemara says, "Al Taimad Rav Meir could Rav Huna Amar Rav." So this is the reason for Rav Meir, and this is what we have to know for today as we go forward. The reason why Rav Meir says that Eidim who come by and say that we signed this document, but we were anusim, the reason why they're not neman is could Rav Huna Amar Rav, to Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav, Moed b'shtar shekasva and sarach l'kaima. Once somebody who borrowed money admits that the shtar was validly written, Rav Meir is of the opinion that is no longer any necessity for us to go ahead and be mekayim to authenticate that shtar. In other words, this idea of authenticating a shtar, as we said, it's one step higher, because midoraisa, we do not have to go ahead and authenticate a shtar. If a shtar is written, it's valid, it's approved, and does not need to be certified once again. Midrabanan, we have to certify and authenticate a shtar that's written to make sure that indeed nothing's forged over here and the Eidim are real people and everything is valid. Says Rav Meir, once the Leiva already says, I admit that this shtar had validity to it, at that point in time, there's no longer a necessity to go out of our way to validate the shtar and to get an authentication of the signatures. The signatures are only necessary to be authenticated if it's not clear if the shtar was a valid shtar. So the Gemara goes on. Gufa, Amar B'Yehuda Amarav. Moida b'shtar shekasvu, ein tzarich l'kayim. Huna Amarav says, again, Huna Amarav being an Amira, he goes ahead and he says this halacha, which is, once the borrower admits the shtar is valid, ein tzarich l'kayim, it's no longer necessary for us to go ahead and certify or authenticate that contract. So Amar le Rav Nachman. Nachman said back to him, Genuva, Genuvi lamalach. Literally means, you are stealing from us. And what he was saying to him was, what are you saying? Are you trying to make this as if this is the opinion that everybody agrees with? If you look at Rashi, Misganev ata loimer divarecha balashon shloi nechlaku by hayachid v'hamarubim k'dei shloi vatlas divarecha de'amet kiyichida. In other words, he was saying you were being deceptive in the way that you were speaking by just saying this line as if this is a unanimous decision that everybody agrees with. That's not true. You're simply quoting one person's opinion, and there are others who disagree with you. So why are you simply getting out here making a statement as if this is an opinion that everybody follows? And he went on, he continued to him. Why don't you just say it the way it is? Why don't you just say that you're paskening like Rav Meir instead of making a statement as if that is the opinion that everybody follows? So Amar le, Rav Huna Amarav said back to him, Umar, and you, what is your opinion? Rav Nachman, what's your opinion? Umar heicha svirale, what do you hold? Amar le, ki asu l'kaman l'dina, when somebody comes before us for a din, and they have a shtar, and the lova, the one who borrowed the money, admits that the shtar was valid, Amrina lahu, we say to them, Zilu kaimu shtaraichu, go ahead and certify or validate or authenticate your shtar, v'chusu l'dina. Once that is done, you could actually take it down to Beis Din and use it to collect your money. In other words, he's clearly saying to him, we do not agree with this opinion that once the borrower admits the shtar was valid, that it no longer needs to have any kiyum shtaros. It does indeed need to have kiyum shtaros, even if the borrower agreed that the shtar was valid. Amar Yehuda Amarav. Yehuda Amarav says the following: Haomer shtar amana huzeh eino neman. If a person claims that a shtar is a shtar amana, he is not neman. What is a shtar amana? So Rashi points out a shtar amana is lo lava klum. Nobody borrowed anything. Ella kasvu umasru lamalva. It was written and it was handed over to a lender. Why? Shemitztarich lilvos yilve. If he needs to have a loan, the shtar will be already written. V'ha'aminu shlo yitzve'enu elam kein malveyu. He believes that this malva is not going to use this to collect money or to extract money from him unless he actually borrows. So my assumption over here is that there are people who sometimes need to get a quick loan. It's kind of cash advance. He needs to have the money available and he needs to do it quickly. He doesn't want to have to go through the whole process of getting approved for his loan and then signing a shtar to get his loan through. He just needs to have that money available as soon as he has to borrow it, and then he'll pay it back very quickly. So what he does is he goes to a potential lender, and he says to him, listen, I know you lend money, There are all types of scenarios that come up in my business life that would cause me to have to borrow money quickly, and then I'll be able to pay you back. So instead of having to go through a whole approval process of getting a loan from you, why don't we do the approval process right now? I'll write the star for you right now that I owe you the money. I have no reason to borrow the money this minute, but when something comes up and I need to have that money available to pay somebody, and I know something's coming in soon, I'll borrow the money from you. The star will already be written, and I'm going to believe you because we know each other well that you won't use this star to collect money from me unless I indeed do go through with the loan. So if a person claims that this star that you're using to collect money from me was not a real star, rather it was a star amana, it was a star that was written, it was a contract that was written in advance of a loan, and therefore I don't owe you any money because I didn't borrow it, the halacha is he is not believed to say that. So the Gemara says, hold on a second. Dika Omar Man, who is the one who's making this claim that the shtar, the contract, the loan contract, is a shtar amana? If it's the borrower who claims that, pshita, obviously he's not going to be believed. Kol kamine, would we believe a guy to say that? Why in anyone's right mind would you believe a borrower to claim that a shtar is a shtar amana? Everybody will say that. Anytime there's a shtar that's taken out against somebody in Beis Din, that he owes somebody $100,000, he'll just say, oh, yes, it's a good shtar, it was written properly, it's got good dates on it, it was signed by Eidim, but you know what, that was a shtar amana. The loan never actually happened, it just was written in advance just in case. Of course, a borrower is not going to be believed to say that. That's a ridiculous thing to believe somebody. We'd invalidate almost all shtaros based on a claim that it's a shtar amana. So Gemara says it must be, if it's not the lova, ve'elo de ka'amar malva. It must be that it's the actual lender who says, oh, you know what, there's a shtar that came out over here, but the shtar, this loan document over here, is not a real loan document because it never actually lent the money. So then, tavol of bracha. It's a very honorable thing to do. He's the one who lent the money, and he's the one who could potentially collect the money with this document, and he is being honest and saying, oh, by the way, the loan never happened, it just was written in advance, so tavel of bracha. Let this person be showered with all types of blessings. He's being honest. Instead of collecting $100,000 from somebody, he's being honest and saying, nobody owes me any money, so why would he not be believed? The Gemara says, rather, it must not be talking about the lova, because he wouldn't be believed. It must not be talking about the malva, because why in the world would we not believe him? El de ka'amri eidim. It must be, it is the eidim in this case who are saying it, and therefore, they themselves don't have anything personal to gain over here. But they are claiming that the shtar that they signed, the document that they signed, was a document which was a shtar amana. They are not believed to say that. So the Gemara goes on and analyzes this case. So hold on. If this is a case where the shtar was already authenticated because we found their signatures on another document, and therefore we're able to validate this shtar because we knew that their signatures were valid from other external sources. So then again, of course they're not believed. Because again, it's like this Mishnah where Eidim are not believed to give further information about a shtar once they sign it. And again, it's so important to understand this concept over here. Eidim have a very, very strong level of ne'amanos. In other words, what they say goes very far. We establish facts based on witness testimony. But those facts that they establish are so strong, they don't later own that information. They can't come back later and say, oh, by the way, the fact that we established earlier, we're retracting our statement. Once they signed the shtar, as long as we know they signed it, the document now establishes a fact. And now that fact is that the loan happened. They can't now go ahead and say, oh, by the way, it was a shtar amana. I'm sorry, your signature is on a document which says that a loan took place. That establishes a fact that a loan took place. And therefore, you don't have the ability now to go ahead and make another statement. This is the concept of kivan shehigid shavenu chozer amagid. Once you make a statement, a valid statement, which is accepted based on the fact that it's valid witness testimony, you don't have the ability to later on come back to Beis Din and make another statement to clarify that or to change that, because the edus was already said. So that's why in this case, if Eidim come by and say, yes, we signed the shtar, but it was a shtar amana, the Gemara says, if their ksav yodam was yotziv mokim acher, we're able to validate that they signed the shtar based on other documents that have their signatures, pshita lo mehemni. Of course, they're not believed, because they already signed it. The ida ain't ksav yodam yotziv mokim acher. If this is a case where we cannot authenticate the shtar without them actually walking into the Beis Din and saying, yes, I signed the shtar, so then lo mehemni. Why is it different than our Mishnah? Why can't they walk into Beis Din and say, Ksav Yodeinu Huzeh, yes, this is our signature, Aval Shtar Amanahu. It's not a real shtar. It's just a shtar, just in case that the loan takes place. Why can't they say that? So we're kind of stuck over here. We have the Gemara puts forth a memra, which is the person is not believed to claim that a shtar is a shtar amana. We have no idea who this is talking about. Because again, either it's obvious or it's not true. So which is it? So the Gemara says, Siman Bash. We have a Siman of Bash, which means there are three different answers over here to explain who's not Naaman. Amar Rava La'olam, really we could say de Amar Lova. We are referring to a case where it is indeed the Lova, the borrower, who is saying that the shtar was a shtar amana. So what's the chiddush? We already said, of course, he's not Naaman. Gemara says, Ukut Rav Huna, this follows the opinion of Rav Huna. The Amar Rav Huna Marav, Moda b'shtar shekasvu ein tzarech l'kaim. This is adding on to that case because this is following what we said before. That once a lova says a shtar is a valid shtar, it does not need any kiyum. So if you're following that opinion of Rav Huna that the shtar does not need any kiyum, if you look at Rashi, Vashmi'in Rav Yehuda Nami Hachi, the lova sha'amar kasavtiv umasartiv lo. If a lova says it was written, yes, indeed it was written, and I gave it to you, aval shtar amanahu, but this is a little bit different. This is a shtar amana. Ein tzarach hamavel lachzer lahavi ulahavi lahayra al chasima. You don't need to go ahead and bring authentication for the shtar. The eineman lova laposlo to la'ava inish. The kasef umasar below halva. It's not normal to do that. In other words, he is basically bringing out this idea, this opinion that once you go ahead and validate a shtar, the shtar gets its validity, and there's nothing else you can add to it that will take away its validity. In other words, since Rav Huna is of the opinion that once the lova authenticates it, it no longer needs to have any authentication on behalf of the Eidim, so he can't either say it's a shtar amana. Abaya says the olam the amar malva. Really, we're talking about a case where it's the malva himself, the lender, who says that the shtar is a shtar amana. Now the Gemara asked previously, what's the chiddush? What is the chiddush in such a case? Or not, what's the chiddush? It's not true. The malva certainly should be believed to be able to say that the loan never happened. And why would we say he's not Neman? The other way around. He's very honorable. Tavol bracha. Let him be bestowed with all types of blessing. He's telling us the truth. He's being honest. Gemara says this is an interesting case. Ukagon shechav la'acher. This is talking about a case where there are others who stand to lose because the malva, because the lender is forgiving this loan. Ukdrav Nasan, this is the famous idea called Shibuda Drav Nasan, which means the Tanya, for we learned in a Brisa, Rabbi Nasan Omer, Minayin Lenosha Bechavero, Mana, person, lends his friend a mana, Bechavero Bechavero, and the friend goes ahead and lends the other person money. Minayin Shmotzim Mizeh Venosnim Lezeh. How do we know that we could just skip the middle person and take it from the final borrower and give it to the original lender? Tamalomar, V'nosan la'asher osham lo. The pasuk says he should give it to the one who is owed the money. Doesn't say, as Rashi points out, V'nosan la'asher hilveyu. you should give it to the one who lent him the money. So this is the concept where if there are three people involved, Reuven lends money to Shimon, and Shimon lends money to Levi, the Levi will be instructed to pay the money back directly to Reuven. In other words, even though Levi took out his loan from Shimon, and he has nothing to do with Reuven, but because Shimon actually owes money to Reuven, we could skip Shimon in this process, take the money from Levi, and give it back to Reuven. Now let's say Shimon, the middleman over here, decides he wants to say, oh, by the way, that money there that I lent, it wasn't real. That star that indicates that I lent money, that was just a star amana. So now what happens? He causes Reuven to lose out on his ability to be able to collect from Levi. In other words, he's cutting himself out of the story and making Reuven lose his ability to be able to collect from Levi. And therefore, indeed, he does have to have ne'emanos to be able to say that the star is not true. Because again, remember, we have a valid star here. We have a valid document which authenticates a loan. This star actually is a valid document which can be used in a Beis Din to collect money from either Shimon or from Levi. Now, once Shimon, the lender, says that this document does not actually reflect a real loan, it's just a document which is here in case a loan happens for a pre-approved loan, what he does there is he causes the other lender to lose his ability to be able to collect money from the other person, and therefore it's not a tava lo bracha. You can't just say, "Oh wow, you should be blessed that you are forgiving the money in the loan," because there's another person here who stands to lose out, and therefore, indeed, he has to have some type of ne'emanos, and therefore, unless he could actually prove that the loan didn't happen, since the star is here, the star reflects a real loan, and this contract can be used to collect the money, even though the Malva says it was a star amana, he's not going to be believed. Rashi gives another explanation. La'olam dika'amri edim. Really, this is talking about a case where it's not the Malva who says the star was a star amana, it's not the Love who says it was a star amana, rather it was the edim. But we asked the question before, hold on a second. Either the edim are not going to be believed because we don't need them, they already made a statement by signing on the star, and the star was authenticated, or they certainly should be believed because we're relying on them to authenticate the star. Gemara says, Lolam de Kamri Edim, we're talking about a case where it was Edim who said it was a star amana. This is a case where the star could not be validated or certified without them. If you're going to ask why they not believed, Gemara says it is because Rav Kahana, because we are following the opinion of Rav Kahana. The Amar Rav Kahana, Aser lo la'adam sheyisha shtar amana b'soch beso. Rav Kahana says that possessing such a star is aser. It is forbidden for a person to possess such a star like this in his house. Why? Mishum shenemar, for the pasuk says, Al tishkon ba'alecha avla. The person should not allow a avla to live within his dwelling. And now on top of your testament base, for Amar of Sheshes, Breder of Edi, Shmami Namid of Kahana, Edim Sha'amru Amana Hayat Varenu. We learned from this that if Edim say that when we signed a star, it was not a real star, rather it was a pre-approved loan that never actually happened. Shmami Namid of Kahana, Edim Sha'amru Amana Hayat Varenu, Ein Ne'emanim. They're not believed. Why not? My taima kivan the avlahu avlo chasmi. This is the concept that we brought up yesterday, which is a person is not ne'eman to turn himself into a rasha. Like Rashi says, v'chi amri chasamnu eine emanim la'arshia esasma. When they say that we signed this document, they are essentially telling us that they did something wrong by signing a star which shouldn't even exist. And the halacha is, person is not neman, ein adam eisim atzmo rasha. Person cannot say edus about himself that he is a rasha, and therefore, since this statement indeed does turn them into somebody who did something wrong by signing the star, they're not neman. Now Rashi, we didn't mention this yesterday, but Rashi, in the previous Amud, says the reason why they're not neman is because in order to turn someone into a rasha, you have to have real edus. Now, a person is related to themselves, Adam Karov Eitzel Atzmo, and therefore a person is the apostle aid to say that they are a Rasha. Now, this might be a little bit counterintuitive to what people think in general society, that of course the person himself should be the first one to be believed, to admit that they did something wrong. But I think this really highlights a very important idea, which is that a person really does not have the ne'emanos to turn themselves into a bad person. There are people who do all kinds of things in their life, and people make all kinds of mistakes, but essentially a person to turn themselves into a Rasha, to say something which gives you the public perception of being a Rasha, you don't have permission to do that. Again, we can make mistakes, we can fix our mistakes, we can admit to certain things that we've done wrong, but to make a proclamation, an official statement, official edus about ourselves, that we are people who did something wrong, we don't have the ne'emanos to say that. So here, that's the reason why the Eidim are not ne'eman to say that it was a shtar amana, because essentially what they're doing is saying that we did something wrong by signing on a shtar which never should have been written, and a person is not ne'eman to say that they are a Rasha, and indeed, in this case, they would be a Rasha for signing it. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Yeshua ben Levi says, Asher lo la'adam sheyisha shtar parua b'soch beso. Once we're on this topic of talking about a shtar which is forbidden to keep within your possession, once we're on the topic of talking about certain shtaros that cannot be kept within a person's possession, we add on a few, which are Asr lo la'adam sheyisha shtar parua b'soch beso. A person is not allowed to keep a shtar which reflects a loan that was already paid up. Why? Mishum shenemar, for it says in the pasuk, Al tishkon ba'olecha avla. You cannot keep within your dwelling an avera. B'marava mishmei de Rav Amri. Marava and Eretz Yisrael, they said in the name of Rav. They learned it from a different pasuk, which is in avon biyadecha. If it is an avon in your hands, harchikeyu, keep it away from you, which is zeh shtar amana. This is a shtar amana. This refers to a shtar amana and ushtar pasim. This reflects to ishtar pasim. What's ishtar pasim? So we explained the shtar amana is a document which reflects a loan that never happened. Why do you do that? In case you want to borrow the money, it should be prepared. A shtar pasim is something else. Shtar pasim is when somebody wants to be able to show creditors that he has a lot of accounts receivable. He wants to show people, look, I have all types of people who owe me money. And I'll show you, look at all these documents that show all these loans that people owe me. So it might not be in the bank account right now, but we're always able to go ahead and collect them. It's always available to be collected, and therefore I have a lot of assets. So again, a shtar pasim is a false shtar that does not reflect a real loan, but it is written in order to give somebody the appearance as if they have a lot of money. Tishkon ba'alecha avla, this refers to zeh shtar parua. This is a paid up loan. So the first pasuk, zeh shtar amana. This is a shtar amana, shtar pasim. Basically, totally false shtaros, false contracts that are written that do not actually reflect any real loans. There's different motivations why a person would write a false shtar, either because he may want to eventually take out the loan, or because he wants to show that he has a lot of accounts receivable. And the other one, the pasuk of Al Tishkon ba'alecha avla, refers to a shtar parua. So it is a valid shtar that reflects a real loan that actually took place. The only problem with it is that it's no longer valid because it is already paid back. So the Gemara goes on and says, Man da Amar Shtar Perua, those who say that you're not allowed to have a Shtar Perua in your possession, a paid up loan, you're not allowed to have a Shtar that reflects a paid up loan. Kol Shekain, certainly Shtar Amana. You can't have a Shtar Amana. That makes sense. Because the first one was actually a Shtar Perua reflects a real loan. But a Shtar Amana is just, the whole thing is just a scam. Man da Amar Shtar Perua, Kol Shekain Shtar Amana, Man da Amar Shtar Amana, Aval Shtar Perua lo. The Shtar Perua you're allowed to have, the Gemara explains, to Zimnin Demashi Liapshiti Desafra. Nothing in life is free. Everything costs money. So now a person wants to go ahead and borrow money, so he needs to write a shtar. Now you can't just pick up a shtar in your local supermarket. A shtar is something which has to be written correctly. It has to reflect all the information that actually took place in that loan. It has to be properly written and properly signed in a way where it can be used in Beis Din. So what do? You go to a sofer. You go to a scribe who writes you a shtar. He knows exactly how to write it, and he charges. How much money? Not all that much money, but remember we're talking about somebody over here who needs to borrow money. If he needs to borrow money, the assumption is he doesn't have that much money. So now the malva, the lender, wants to make sure that there's a loan here. So what does he do? He pays for it. He lays out the money. So now it's possible that the loan was actually paid up, but he never got reimbursed for the value of the shtar that he laid out for the lova. Who's responsible to pay for the shtar? Of course, the lova. Why should the malva have to pay to get a shtar to lend somebody money? He doesn't want to take a loss on this loan, so therefore, it's the lova who has to pay for it. But in many cases, the lova doesn't have any money. So the malva, the lender, lays out the cash, and he holds on to that shtar until the lova actually comes back and pays him those $5 or $10 that it cost him to get that shtar written. So that's why there are cases when holding on to a shtar perua actually might be a legitimate thing to do, because while the loan was paid up, I still won't give back. I'm going to withhold that document from the lender until he pays me for it, because the physical document is mine. So therefore, it's not a given that it's always usher for a person to have a shtar which reflects a paid up loan in his possession, because there are scenarios where it might indeed be legitimate to hold on to it, because he wants to wait until he gets paid back for the value of the actual document. Itmar, Sefer Sheino Muga, if a person has a sefer which is not properly edited, in other words, there are mistakes in it, Amar Rabbi Ami, Adla min yom mutter la'ashoso, mikan va'elech asr la'ashoso. You cannot hold on to a sefer which is not properly edited, which has mistakes in it. Mishum shenemar, for it says in the pasuk, Al tishkon ba'alecha avla. So what is this referring to? If you look at Rashi, Rashi says Sefer Shein Muga. What is that? Torah, Nevi'im, and Kesuvim. So it sounds like this refers specifically to Tanakh. So you have a Sefer Torah, where you have the Nevi'im, where there are mistakes in it. The halacha is, you cannot use it, you can't keep it for more than 30 days without fixing it. The Rishonim discussed this, about what exactly it's talking about. And the simple understanding is, we're talking about a Sefer Torah, or the Nevi'im, or the Kesuvim that is read publicly. And if you're going to read it publicly with mistakes in it, you have a whole community which is possibly going to get false information from your public Sefer Torah. Now the Ritva points out that Rashi was talking about Torah, Nevi'im, and Kesuvim. Why? Because this memra that was said over here was made by Rav Ami before Torah Shebal Peh was written down. So therefore, it was only relevant to Torah, Nevi'im, and Kesuvim. But nowadays that we have everything written down, we have all Torah Shebal Peh, all of oral law is written down, it's even more important to make sure that what's written down is correct. And if you have any sefer, whether it's a Gemara, or it's a Shulchan Aruch, or it's any other Sifrei Shilas Utshuvas that exist, we have to make sure that it has correct information. And if it has any false information in it, then you're not allowed to keep it in your house for more than 30 days. I'm not sure if this is actually working. Why? Mishum shenemar, for it says in the pasuk, Al tishkon ba'alecha avla, you can't keep within your dwelling an avla. Now, the Rishonim explain, Al tishkon, a dwelling is for 30 days. You know this from mezuzah, from other places, that a proper dwelling is only considered a dwelling for 30 days. So therefore, a person can have 30 days to get the editing of the mistakes inside the sefer taken care of, but beyond that, he can't hold it. Now, how about Sifrei Torah that have mistakes in it that we just don't want to bother going through the expense of fixing it? And every proper shul has a number of Sifrei Torah that we see. They come out in Simchas Torah with that gartel on the outside, and we all know that that's an indication that the Sefer Torah should not be used because there are mistakes in it. So the poskim explain that having mistakes in the Sefer Torah refers to a Sefer Torah or any Sefer that's being used. What's the reason? The reason is because we don't want people to make mistakes. It would be a terrible thing for us to have something which gives the impression as being a real valid Sefer Torah, but has mistakes in it. But if you have some type of indication that you never plan, in other words, you decide you're not going to fix this one, just going through the expense of fixing the Sefer Torah, it's an old Sefer Torah, it's hard to use, whatever it is, they just decided they're not fixing it. In such a case, as long as there's some type of sign on the Sefer Torah, which is clear to anybody who picks up the Sefer Torah, that this Sefer Torah has mistakes in it, that's okay to keep it like that. It's only when you plan to fix it, or you plan to use it, that's when you have to make sure there are no mistakes in it. Amar of Nachman, Eidim sha'amru amana hayud varenu. Eidim who say amana hayud varenu. In other words, they're indeed telling us that the shtar is a shtar amana. Eine emanim. They're not believed. Moda'a hayud varenu. If this is a moda'a, eine emanim. They're not believed. What is moda'a? Moda'a is when a person gives over information to somebody in advance, letting them know that something is about to happen. In other words, a person could come to his friend and say, listen, I would like to sit down with you right now and sign the following document, which is that tomorrow I'm going to sign a shtar which says that I owe somebody a lot of money, or it says that I'm going to complete a business deal with somebody, but I'm letting you know I don't want to go into that business deal. I really want everybody to know that this whole deal is not true. The loan is not valid, but I have no choice. They're forcing me, they're tying my hands behind my back, and I just can't get out of it. So before I sign that shtar, I'll deal with this later to get myself out of it. But before I sign what will appear to be a valid shtar, I'm giving modah to say that this whole transaction that I'm getting into is not a real transaction. Indeed, that's the right thing to do. If a person finds himself in such a situation, to write a shtar modah in advance. However, if Eidim just come by and say that it was a shtar modah, they're not believed to say that. Marbar Avashi Amar, Amana hayod varenu. If there's a shtar amana, they claim that it was a shtar amana. Eine emanim, they're not believed. Modah hayod varenu. If they're claiming that it was a shtar modah, ne'emanim, they are indeed believed in that case. My taima. What's the difference? Both of them are essentially canceling the validity of what would otherwise be a valid shtar. Gemara says, "My time a high nitin likasev, v'hai lo nitin likasev." This is permissible to be written. The other one is not. In other words, there's never ever a good reason for a person to write a shtar amana. You just don't write a shtar that reflects a loan that never happened, and therefore, by the virtue of the fact that Eidim are claiming that they signed onto a shtar that was an inappropriate shtar to exist, they are incriminating themselves by saying that they signed on a false shtar. So therefore, they can't say that. However, a shtar modah, you're right, it's canceling a loan. You're right, it is invalidating what would otherwise be a valid shtar. But there are legitimate times when a shtar modah would be written. And therefore, Marbar Avashi says, indeed, they would be ne'eman to say that it was a shtar modah. In other words, the difference just is, in the case of shtar amana, there's really never a scenario when it's appropriate to write a shtar amana, because a shtar amana reflects a loan that never happened. Shtar modah is something which is sometimes even the proper thing to do, to sign a shtar modah when you can't get yourself out of a certain mess. So here, it's just a matter of whether the Eidim are going to be believed that the shtar was a shtar modah. It was an information shtar giving notice beforehand that the loan was, or the shtar was written under duress, and therefore, since it is proper to write a shtar modah, they're going to be believed. Ba'aminei Rav Amir of Nachman. Rav asked Rav Nachman the following question: Tanai hayad varenu mahu. What's the halacha if Edom say that this was a good shtar, but there was a condition, there was something else thrown into the shtar that put the whole transaction with some type of contingency? In other words, what happens if they say that there was a contingency within this shtar, but it was never actually fulfilled? So again, they are not saying anything asr. There's nothing wrong with having a shtar, with having a tanai. There's nothing wrong with making a contract with some type of contingency in it. However, they are essentially invalidating the loan. They are essentially saying that the shtar does not reflect an obligation to pay back. So the Gemara says, Moda va'amana hainu taima, the reason why they're not naaman is to akrile l'shtara. Both those cases of moda and amana, what they're doing is they're taking what otherwise appears to be a very clear loan or very clear shtar, which validates a monetary obligation from one person to the next, and when Edom come by and say it's a shtar amana or it's a shtar moda, they are uprooting that obligation. So this as well. Who cares what the reason is? Whether it's because it's a shtar amana, or because there was a shtar moda, or because there was a condition that was never met. The bottom line is, this document cannot be used to claim the money. Odilma, maybe, on the other hand, we should see this slightly differently. Tanai milsa achritihi. Tanai doesn't reflect anything about the actual loan, rather it's an external factor that would cancel the loan. So Amarle, Kiasu l'kaman l'dina, when such a case like this comes before us for a din, Amrinun lahu, we say to them, Zilu kaimu tina aichu, v'chusa l'dina. Indeed, we say that if Edom come by and say that there was a contingency, or there was some type of condition on this loan, we indeed require them to fulfill that condition before collecting the loan. The Gemara goes on and says, okay, if that's the case, that Edom are believed to say that there was a condition, there was a tanai on this loan, what happens if Eid Amar Tanai, one aid, in other words, there are two Edom signed on it, one of the witnesses come by and say there was a tanai, there was a condition, the Eid Amar Eino Tanai, another person says, another one of the Edom say there was no tanai, so we have a disagreement amongst the Edom whether there was a tanai. Amar Papa, Tarvayu Bishtara Ma'alya Kabasadi. Both of them are indeed testifying that this is a valid shtar. There's one person who's saying that there was a tanai over here. He's just an individual by himself. You can't take the testimony of one person in the place of two. In other words, again, this concept of Kivin Shehigid, Shuvein Echozra Magid comes out, which is, as soon as those two Edom come by and sign that shtar and admit that they signed the shtar, they validate the shtar, we now have two solid Edom that are backing up a loan. Now, in a later piece of testimony, one aid, who happens to be the same aid as before, but his testimony from before sticks, now he comes back and says, oh, by the way, the shtar is not valid because there was a condition over here. So says the Gemara, says Rav Papa, I'm sorry, he is one aid in place of two aidim, and we're not going to take the word of one aid in place of the two aidim. So the Gemara continues, Maskef la Ravuna Breda Yeshua. Ravuna Breda Yeshua asks, Ihachi, if that's the case, afilu tarvayu unami. The same thing should be true, even if there are two eidim. In other words, if the problem is that there's eidus over here, and now you're trying to go ahead and counter it with other eidus, doesn't help. The problem is not that it's chad b'makom trey, that it's one aid against two. Even if it was trey b'makom trey, there are two eidim over here. We can't go ahead and uproot the first piece of eidus. Ella Amrina. So what is the reason that when it comes to two eidim, we would indeed take their testimony? In other words, why is that you're differentiating between if it was one aid and a second aid? must be that when two Eidim come by, it works. Why does it work? When the statement is made, it's essentially uprooting the first thing that I said, because I'm explaining that what I originally said on the star was only true if the condition is met. And if you're telling me that I'm believed to say that, so then the same thing should be true even by 1 Ela Amrinon, Hani Lama'akar Sadu Sayo Ka'asu. These two people are coming to uproot their first Eidus. Hainami, this one aid, when he says that there was a Tanai, Lama'akar Saduse Ka'asi, he is coming to indeed uproot his original statement. The Helchasak, Rav Huna Brei Yeshua, Halacha indeed is like Rav Huna Brei Yeshua, that we would take this one aid at his word, and therefore we'd have to ask the person to go ahead and fulfill the Tanai, to fulfill that condition before collecting with it. We will stop over here by Tana Rabbanan. It was a pleasure to learn with you over the past 4 days. Mitzvah Shem, the Rav will be back tomorrow morning. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of your week.
Years ago, 5 years ago, somebody came back from